Hi guys, welcome back. We have a guest reader today. All of you in my class know him. You've seen his cute pictures. This is Rudy. And he reminds me a lot of that black and brown doggy that you're gonna meet. You see his ears? I think it's time for you to take a nap, huh? Wanna go take a nap? No? You wanna listen to the story? You wanna listen to the story? Yes, I think I do. Okay. All right. I thought I was glad when the weekend came because I didn't have to go to school. But then Bertha told me we were going to church on Sunday. I hadn't been to church since I was little. Scrappy never wanted any part of it, calling those people do-gooders and Bible readers. But Mama took me and Jackie for a while. I didn't really remember much about it except Jackie whining and complaining all the way there until my mama told her to hush up. But then after a while, my mama got too nervous to drive. She stopped taking off her bathrobe or even combing her hair, so we just stopped going. When I walked into Bertha's kitchen on Sunday morning, she looked me up and down and said, "Oh dear." She wiped her hands on her apron and said, "Don't you have a dress, darling?" I looked down at my jeans that were far too short and my t-shirt that was far too big because it used to be my sister Jackie's, and I shook my head. "No." "Well, that's okay," she said, flapping her hand at me. "We'll go shopping this weekend." Then Gus came in the kitchen, and I didn't even hardly recognize him. He had on a coat and a tie. Instead of his usual muddy boots, he wore these lace-up black shoes that were buffed and shiny. He could have passed for one of those fancy rich bankers over in Raleigh, except for the garden dirt that was under his fingernails. And his hair was squashed flat from his baseball cap. He sat at the kitchen table, and Bertha gave him a kiss on the cheek. "Well, look at you," she said, making him blush. He kept pulling at his collar and wiping the sweat off the back of his neck with a handkerchief. After breakfast, we headed down to the mountain, Rocky Creek Baptist Church, and when I got inside, I knew right away why Bertha had said, "Oh dear," when she saw me that morning. The other girls in church wore dresses. I couldn't look anybody in the eye, knowing my face was beet red and my jeans were all wrong. I sat in the hard wooden pew sandwiched between Gus and Bertha, while the organist played church music. More and more people filed in, smiling and nodding at one another, saying good morning. And then Bertha poked me and whispered, "There's the Odoms." And I glanced up to see Howard and his family, walking in, carrying their Bibles, making their way to the pew across the aisle. 5 red-headed boys with slicked down hair, poking each other, clomping a little too loud in their Sunday school shoes. Their mama was chatting with folks, asking about their sick grandmas and how their babies were, while their red-headed daddy was mopping his face with a handkerchief. It sure was hot in here. After a prayer and a hymn, the kids had to go back to their Sunday school classes. And imagine my surprise when I got to my class and there was Audrey Mitchell. She looked at me all wide-eyed like I was a Martian right off a spaceship, so I sat far away from her, as far as I could. Then Howard came in with his up-and-down walk and sat next to me. Our Sunday school teacher was a gray-haired, wrinkly-faced woman named Mrs. Mackey. She didn't waste 1 minute introducing me to everybody, telling them what my name was, and welcoming to their church family. Then she taught us a song called Good Old Noah. Howard sang louder than anybody, and personally, I thought it was a little embarrassing for him, but nobody else seemed to pay him any mind. After that, Mrs. Mackey told us we were going to play a game called Bible Detective. She would read questions from her Bible Detective cards, and whenever you answered one right, you got a Bible buck. Not a real buck, like school money. And when you got enough Bible bucks, you could cash them in for a prize. While she read the questions, boys were fidgeting and girls were whispering and giggling, and I just kept quiet sitting there in my ugly jeans. Howard's hand shot up every time she asked a question, but I knew for sure I was never going to win any Bible bucks. And after Sunday school, all the grown-ups and kids gathered out in the fellowship hall. Bertha paraded me around like I was a beauty queen, introducing me to everybody she knew, and saying how lucky her and Gus were to have me staying with them. People nodded and politely said, "Ain't that nice?" and stuff like that. But I bet they were wondering why my own mama didn't want me or couldn't take care of me. And I bet you they knew that I was not wearing the right kind of jeans to church. And they were wondering where my dress was. When Bertha introduced me to Howard's mama, she hugged me and said Howard had told her all about me. And she craned her neck, looking around the room for Mr. Odom. He must have been outside. And she said, "Well, if I ever catch those boys long enough to introduce you, but you know what? You're welcome to come on over to the house anytime." The boys were running around, all those Odoms, with their ties loose and their shirt tails flapping. They were grabbing brownies off paper plates while Howard was showing off his Bible books to everybody. But you come on by the house anytime, she whispered. Now, wouldn't that be nice? Bertha asked, grinning at me. I just nodded and said, yes, ma'am, because I knew that's what I was supposed to say. When we finally climbed into the car and headed back up the mountain toward home. Do you want to get down? Do you want to get down? I scanned the woods and the yards along the way, hoping to see that stray dog again, but I didn't. What I did see, though, was a truck full of hay. And you know what? Jackie's friend Casey told me once, if you count to 13 when you see a truck full of hay, you can make a wish. So guess what? That's exactly what I did. Things at school just seemed to get worse and worse every day. My homework papers came back all marked up by Mrs. Willoughby in red pencil with notes like, see me after school, and why don't we try this again and do it over? Sometimes I didn't even do my homework. It seemed like a waste of time since I wasn't going to be there much longer. Once in a while, Bertha asked me if I had homework, and I was pretty good at just shrugging and changing the subject. You want to go over? You want to go over? Do you want to get to it? Besides, I was used to getting marked up papers like that because back in Raleigh, I wasn't exactly student of the month or year. Jackie was the only one who ever fussed at me for not going to school or not doing my homework. But I reminded her, quite often, that she was not my mother and just my sister. When my teacher called the house to tell my mama how bad I had done on a math test or asked why I hadn't turned in my book report, Mama would holler on and carry on for about 5 minutes or so, and then she would just throw her skinny arms up in the air, heave a big sigh, before saying, what's the use? Then she'd shuffle out of the room in her bedroom slippers, muttering about how she didn't deserve this aggravation. At least back in Raleigh, though, I had friends at school. But here, when I sat at a table in the cafeteria, girls made faces, like they smelled something bad, and then slid their trays away from me. Most days, I pretended that I had a stomachache, and I spent the afternoon in the nurse's office, drawing more stars and hearts on my arm, with a marker making tattoos. And at recess, Howard kept following me around, reminding me he was my backpack buddy, and asking a mile-a-minute questions. Did you ever visit your daddy in jail? Why ain't your sister here too? Want some of my Bible books? Because I'll share. Sometimes I answered him and sometimes I didn't. The thing about Howard was, everything just seemed to roll right off him. It seemed like nothing bothered him one little bit. But it was clear that nobody at school wanted much to do with him, and he didn't seem to mind. His brother Dwight was always surrounded by punching, ball-tossing, fist-pumping boys, but Howard never joined them. A couple of times when we rode into town, down the main road with Gus and Bertha, I'd see his older brothers Burl and Lenny tossing a football or shooting some basketball hoops with their friends. But Howard would be sitting on those steps scribbling in a notebook, or over by the garage fiddling with his bicycle. Bertha commented about him one day when we drove by. That poor boy is so much of a loner, she said. Nothing wrong with that, said Gus. Bertha shook her head. Not for a child. Children need friends. I don't get it. He's just as sweet as can be. I bet it's because of his up and down walk, I said from the back seat. Well, that's mean, she said. She turned around to face me. You're going to make so many new friends here in Colby, Charlie. I just know it. I stared out the window and pretended like I wasn't even listening to her, go on about all the things that I could do, like joining Girl Scouts. And she told me about her friend Jonelle, who lived in a Fairview and had a daughter my age. We could visit them some Saturday if I wanted to. Maybe we could go to the mall downtown in Asheville. On and on and on she went, talking as if my life in Colby was going to be like living in Disney World. You're going to talk that girl's head right off, Bertie, Gus said. Bertha laughed and slapped him playfully on the arm. Where do you think that dog is? I asked Gus. Could be anywhere. That mutt does get around. I've been looking everywhere for that stray dog. I'd seen him twice since that day that he'd come to Gus and Bertha's, but both times he darted off into the woods when he saw me. He sure loves my meatloaf, I could tell you that, said Bertha. He licks that pan clean and then hightails it out of there so fast I hardly get so much as a glimpse of him. I leaned back against the seat and sighed. I bet I was never going to catch that dog. And what if I did? Could I really keep him? My mama would probably have a hissy fit. But I bet Scrappy would call from jail and tell her to stop yammering on and let me just have a dog if I wanted one. And then as we were turning onto the main road in town, I saw a black horse out in a field eating grass, switching its tail at flies. And I shook my fist at it 3 times and made my wish. That was the rule for a black horse wishing. If you see a white horse, you could just make a wish. But if it's a black horse, you have to shake your fist at it 3 times. I learned that one from good old Scrappy, which made me a little skeptical, but I did it anyway. I shook my fist and I made my wish. And that brings us to chapter 6. What are you staring at over there? Okay, so I hope that you're enjoying the story so far. In your journals today, if you are following along and doing some type of stop and jots, I would like to ask you to, we did a prediction last time. I don't know, maybe continue with some sequencing events. I feel so bad assigning you work with the read alouds because they are just supposed to be fun. So if you want, you can always feel free to do that 4 square. If not, you can just grab a blankie and a pillow and snuggle up and listen to the story with whoever you are watching with. And our secret guest reader, I'm going to put you down on the floor. Say bye. Say bye, Rudy. Bye, guys. I will see you soon for chapter 6.